Time for the AVGN theme intro again. Nah, screw it. Boom! Let's just blow it up. And then every title card flashes before your eyes before the 100th, which this is the 100th episode and Mike's final title card for the series, because none of us knew it would go past 100 episodes. The music in this episode was fantastic. There are two guys doing the score. One was Lachlan Barkley, who does a lot of video game covers and stuff, and really rocks him out. Sounds really awesome. And then the other guy, John Jennings Boyd, worked on a feature film called Book of Caleb, so that's how I knew him. And a lot of the music you hear in this was from that film.
These games suck too.
Well, even though this is the 100th episode, it was kind of debatable. Like the Ninja Turtles 3 movie review was counted as 2 only because it was a two-parter, which was only because it couldn't fit on YouTube as a whole. So there were things like that you could debate. But either way, we treated this like it was the 100th because it was about time to do something special.
Better in the fucking medieval times.
This very much could have been a final episode if I were to do one. I would have never known I would have been doing more than 100. So I was amazed to have made it this far. So I figured this would start out as like the culmination of all the nerd's efforts. Every game he ever hated, every piece of shit that he's surrounded himself with and devoted his life to. He's just had enough at this point. Has the creator had enough?
I don't like them.
Well, sometimes I feel that way because it's such a big sacrifice, and the toll that all these videos have taken on my life is just, I can't even explain. But like the nerd finds out at the end of this video that it's something, all these bad games is something he can't live without. Just like the nerd is such a big part of my life, it's something that I could never give up.
Let's try it out.
I love it. Gyromite is a really fun game, but it's meant to be 2 players, so you have to have a buddy to control those pipes, to move the pipes out of your way. So it's a co-op experience. But the other option is to use the robotic operating buddy, or Rob the Robot. These are my favorite parts in the nerd episodes, where the nerd is not speaking, where everything he needs to communicate is done through the cinematics of the video. What I'm trying to do here is recreate the experience of trying to play the game for the first time.
Oh, okay, I get it. This is like some kind of 2-player co-op mode. Okay. Well,
Think about how less interesting the video would be if the nerd just explained it all flat out. Then it would just be a game review and you would lose all those precious moments of discovery.
It is a 2-player game. The first player controls.
So the only way to play this game by yourself is to use the robot. And it's kind of a creepy concept to have an artificial life form sitting right next to you playing the game. So the idea of the robot being alive is a really ripe concept with a lot of potential, and I think that's why a lot of game reviewers have already done the whole, Rob is alive thing, because it's the first thing that comes to your mind. So I'm aware that it had been done many, many times before. The one that sticks out in my mind the most is by Awesome Video Games. They did a really hilarious take on the whole Rob thing. I knew my take would be different, but I also knew that I had to do a really good job on it. And the longer I held out on making this episode, the more pressure there was to make it really good. I had the Rob episode planned since the first year on YouTube when I was doing the Power Glove episode. It seemed logical that the next video would be another accessory. It would be Rob the Robot. But then I had all these ideas for it and I decided I didn't want to do it unless I did it really good. And when I was doing 2 episodes a month, there wasn't time. I just didn't have enough time to make it as special as I wanted. And then when the idea of the 100th episode was coming up, I figured, hey, that'll be a good one to save it for. I'm going to tell you about a little mistake here. Right now, Rob is not supposed to have the spinning gyro tops yet. And if you look right about where my right hand is, you can see I photoshopped something out. That was one of the gyros because he wasn't supposed to have them yet. In fact, right now, the nerd's going over to get the gyros out of the drawer. So I fucked up, and rather than refilm, I decided to just fix it in post-production. Let me tell you, getting Rob the Robot to work, getting them all set up, is just like putting together some kind of crazy science project. It's no wonder why Rob the Robot didn't catch on and become a popular accessory, but I found it really fun to play, believe it or not. Even though the video has to present it in kind of a negative tone because it's the nerd, really, it makes you think about the game in a way that you normally wouldn't. It gives you a whole new challenge. It's just a completely different kind of way of playing the game.
Affirmative your ass! Let's play!
What you're about to see here is kind of interesting. I'm showing you how long it takes for Rob to actually do something, and it's pretty accurate. So I'm trying to move that first pipe right now, and I'm recording the game footage at the same time I'm shooting Rob with the camera. So what you're seeing here is sort of a live multicam edit. Although the one with me in it on the bottom left there, that was a reenactment, so that wasn't the actual gameplay. But a lot of the close-ups where you see Rob, he actually is playing the game, and that's the same game footage that you're seeing on screen, like right here. So he drops the top,
Finally!
and that brings the pipe down, and then only to have a smick come and kill you.
No! The object
You know, I kind of like what I did here with using the TV as a border to frame this shot, because I held off for a long time shooting any of these videos in the 16:9 widescreen format because I didn't really see the point of it, because the games are all in 4:3. They're all square, just like an old TV. So I never really saw the point of going to 16:9, but eventually I gave in and I started doing it. And I'm glad I did, because it really helps with all the cinematic shots. Not to go off on a little, technical tangent right now, but this video was still in standard definition. I did not make the move to HD yet, because that was another thing I was holding off on for a while, because, I wanted to get a camera that was really good. And I'm glad I did. I eventually got the Panasonic AF100. But right now what I was using was the HVX, and I actually made a mistake. I thought the HVX could shoot HD on the mini DV tapes, but it only shoots HD on the cards, and the cards were kind of expensive. They were P2 cards. They weren't the same as the the SD cards, and it just wasn't what I expected. So I continued to shoot these videos in standard definition, thinking that they're on the web, so what does it matter? But everybody was shooting HD, so it would have been nice for the DVD, but at least the 100th episode jumped to 16:9, so it's just a little detail that made it a little something extra special. This was the most time spent on making a single nerd episode. This was the most work I ever put into one of all time. The only episode that came close, very close, was Crazy Castle. According to my hourly logs, the Crazy Castle episode took me 122 hours and 15 minutes. The Rob episode, 122 hours and 30 minutes. So 15 minutes longer. The Crazy Castle episode was a totally different kind of experience, because with that episode I had people helping me. And that's why that episode had some funny outtakes, and there was another camera we had shooting some behind the scenes footage. So there was really a lot more bonus features for the Crazy Castle episode for that reason. But for the Rob episode, since I was doing it all by myself, there wasn't really that many outtakes or any kind of, behind the scenes footage. So I wish there was more documentation of the whole process of making this video, but there really isn't. And there isn't too much to explain either. It's pretty straightforward that what you see is what you get. But also on this DVD, be sure to check out the behind the scenes footage I have of this episode that shows some of the green screens and how some of the effects were done. And I do a commentary on that too, so check that out. So Rob moving his head there was all stop motion. And yes, to get his arms to move here, Rob had to be facing the TV so I could actually control him the same way you would in the game. But I explained that also in the other video.
How about Double Dragon 2 or Dr. Mario?
Rob also embodies the friend that you have who always wants to come over and play the same games.
Come on, Rob. You come
Because
over,
Rob could only work with Gyromite and Stack
I
Up.
got this whole shelf, both sides.
It's understandable because can you imagine playing Double Dragon with Rob or something? It wouldn't work with most games. So it really is a special kind of game that you would ever want to do this with. And I said it was fun before, and you can see here how frustrating it is, but the frustration actually is the fun, because to get Rob to work, like right there, there might be another gyro in the way, and then another pipe will come up. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. One of the gyros might stop spinning, so it'll fall off. There's a lot of thinking that's involved to get it to work, so it's just an added layer of challenge. When you're playing Stack Up, right there, that's the easiest mistake to make. And the gyros, if you don't keep them spinning, they're just going to fall off. So you always have to move them onto the rotator.
Yeah, let's see how you like it.
I always thought it would be funny if you could switch places with Rob. Imagine if he was doing the first player and you were doing the Rob the Robot part. So I always thought that was a funny idea. And this dancing bit brings to mind the episode of Awesome Video Games I was talking about where they do the Rob dance. That had me laughing so hard I almost pissed myself.
The hell with Rob. I'm playing by myself.
Can you play by yourself with Rob? That was the whole experiment here. Technically you could if you just use both controllers. And this foot bit here, this is probably the best way to do it.
Better yet.
If you don't want to use Rob the Robot and also don't have another friend to play with there. These are the parts I really laugh at because the nerd is just such a goofball to build a Gyromite controller and that he wouldn't even try to make it look nice. It's just trying to make it functional. Oh, right there is kind of tough because you can't cut the circuit boards in half. So he could have just duct taped the controllers together. It would have worked just as much. But it's such a sloppy job, and that's why I love this part.
I got a better idea. How about play a different fucking game?
So the whole idea behind the video was that Rob was going to turn every game in the world into Gyromite and Stack Up because that's the only two games that work with him. I only own one copy of Gyromite and one copy of Stack Up, so this was all a Photoshop job right here to clone them and make it look like every game in my collection was being transformed. Rob's jumping around on strings there.
You're doing this, you cybernetic shit sucker.
Very difficult. All the lightning and all the electricity or whatever is all frame by frame in Photoshop. All the controllers are on strings. These are all old tricks. Like right there, I have the controllers in reverse. So they were actually being pulled off me. Just like in the Nightmare on Elm Street episode, I did the same thing. So there wasn't really anything too difficult here. It was just time consuming. This whole sequence here, it's pretty crazy to think that I didn't even have a camera operator. I was doing this all by myself. All those POV shots and everything. It was just me lying on the floor with the camera. Sometimes I was holding it and sometimes it was on the tripod. All those boxes of Stack Up there. If that was real, that would be pretty impressive because Stack Up is a pretty rare game to get it in the box with all the parts in it.
Prime objective complete. No more inferior games.
So this is where the plot thickens. Rob explains that he's kind of like a bad game Terminator. He terminates bad games and makes them all Gyromite and Stack Up because that's his idea of a perfect game for whatever reason. You'd know that if you saw the episode, so I don't even know why I'm telling you it. I even tried to tie it in with the video game crash of 1983, that R.O.B considered himself the hero, bringing games back, because he could have been the Nintendo mascot if R.O.B would have taken off, but it was Mario.
Be quiet. You are a biological unit with
The robot voice was my own voice. I could have gotten someone else to do it, but I figured I would just do it myself, and I put a whole bunch of filters and effects on it to get it to sound like that. And I could have gotten someone else to film this, but with this episode I was just trying to get it done and wanted to work my own hours on it and just finish it as quick as I could, because it took me an entire month to get this all done.
will be terminated.
The time it took to put all those lasers and sound effects in, and this part here, it was all frame by frame in Photoshop, so it just, like, it wasn't anything that special, it wasn't anything that complicated, but it just took a long time to get it done, and that's a hard thing to do when you got to come out with another episode in a month. You know, you can't just keep on working on it until it's finished. You gotta have a deadline, you know. If this was to be the final nerd episode, I think it would have been a great way to end, because at this point I felt like, after 100 episodes, I felt fulfilled that the videos have served their purpose. But if you would have asked me back when I was working on the Top Gun episode and told me, you know, you're going to do 100 episodes, I would have been like, what? Like, how is that possible? And it was possible because of the support from the fans. So I always kept it going. And this was kind of where I was just about thinking like, like what if it would end here? And then, nah, you know, keeping it going.
Won't fucking have it.
So right here the nerd gets up, and it's kind of funny how the nerd takes a lot of abuse and keeps on going. He's a tough guy, and I would have never thought that, because he was like a nerd character, but he's also kind of like a superhero in a way. He's like Rocky. He gets knocked down all the time but keeps on getting back up. So I took a lot of inspiration from different B movies. Like there's a movie called GOG, which is about these laboratory robots that go berserk. But my biggest thing I wanted to do was like a Japanese monster movie fight, like Ultraman or something like that. I wanted to build a miniature city set and actually have someone in a R.O.B costume made out of cardboard. So it would have been just like a Godzilla movie, but I didn't have time. There was no way I could have done that in a month, so I had to resort to the cheap green screen. And I didn't have a lot of room for green screen in my basement, so it didn't come out that well. The ending was a little rushed. That was my only regret with this video, is that I think that final battle could have been a lot more epic. Oh, and by the way, right there, Simon's Quest, ending on the first nerd episode, of course. So yeah, other than that, I think the episode came out really well. I think the story was strong, and as of right now, I think it is my best nerd episode ever.